Dr. Marko Malawasi. He's from Czech University of Life Sciences, which is Vysoká škola zemědělská v Praze. He's from the Department of Geosciences, or Geoinformatics of the Faculty of Environmental Sciences. He's an Italian working at that university already for 3 years, and he started in Italy as a vegetation ecologist. He worked on vegetation of Italian coastal dunes in central Italy, and then he started to be more and more interested in spatial analysis of ecological data, and this led him to use of GISs, Geographical Information Systems, and to using data from remote sensing. And for today, he prepared a lecture for us just about remote sensing. How can we use remote sensing in ecology? So, Marko,
yeah,
thank you for coming, and the floor is yours.
Thanks to you. So, good evening. Yeah, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's never clear to me. Well, of course, this lesson is intended to give some basic about remote sensing, theoretical basis, and also to show you some application. All of this is done into an ecological domain, because this is what I am. I'm an ecologist. And of course, for more technical stuff, you should speak with engineers and so on. Whatever. The title, as you can see, is Remote Sensing, a Major Technological Revolution for Ecology. This is why I will dedicate this talk basically to the application in ecology and give you some background of the basic stuff. Well, in the last 50 years, ecology has been through 4 major technological revolutions. At least this is the opinion of this author, Chavez, 2013. One is, I mean, all of these are quite easy to understand and quite intuitive, but one of these is the advent of the numeric era. We all know now, like, I guess also for the youngest one, when we started, we have like computers that could do much less than they can do now. Okay, here there is Moore's law. I don't know if you ever heard about it, and basically it's telling that every 2 or 3 years now, I don't remember, the calculation power is doubling. So it's amazing. The number of calculation that a mouse can do is quite close to the last processor, quad-core i8 processor, and so on. A second major technological revolution is, of course, the PCR, for this reaction. I was thinking this morning about component analysis. The PCR from the 84, 83, I was barely born. It's quite important, allow you to replicate DNA sections and do phylogenetic analysis and so on. Another big revolution, in Chavez's opinion, is the ability to disseminate information and knowledge at global scale. It means that we are working with big data. We can send very easily data across the globe, and at the same time we have citizen science. This is one of the example. Like, we can involve people in getting data and in disseminating data. And last but not least, of course, my interest is environmental sensing, that's remote sensing. Okay, let's do a dive into this remote sensing. Why remote sensing, abbreviation RS, is so important for ecology? We all know that the ecological process, at a variety of spatial and temporal scales. Okay, and they generate certain patterns at certain scale that may differ from that at which the process acts. Okay, so you may observe something acting on a small scale and it has huge consequences for a much higher scale. Okay, and this is quite important for remote sensing because finally remote sensing can give us a lot of data from the smallest to the larger scale, and also in a temporal line. So we can have a lot of information in time and space with different scales. And we are able to connect all these processes and patterns at different scale and time. So this is quite important from a pure ecological point of view. It can cover like a local space, like a grassland here in front of university, but remote sensing can also monitor the whole continent, whole Africa, I don't know. This is just an example to remember how time and scale are important in our field of ecology, and this is why we need broader scale of observation in time and space. Okay, because every process, not only connected to, of course, not only connected to vegetation, but every process like geological process or else needs to be observed at different spatial and temporal scale. But I don't want to go into it too much. Here, a list. You don't need to go through it, but just I want to show you how many different types of data remote sensing can collect. You have direct approaches and indirect approaches. Most of them, you may know them: land cover data, species composition, chlorophyll, ocean color and circulation. And you see, all these are names of satellites: Hyperion, Aster, Equinox, Quickbird, Aviris, Modis, Aster, Meris. It's full, Landsat. So we have a lot of satellites flying above our heads. And again, climate, soil moisture, phenology, topography as well. So you can see like there are a lot of type of data, and if you are ecologists, you know how much these data are important for studying ecological processes and to relate these processes to the pattern that we observe. This was just an example. And this is one of the most applied, most common application of remote sensing data in ecology. It doesn't mean that it's only this kind of application, but well, so far spatial ecologists really work with this, and they're called species distribution models. You may know them. Alternatively, you have habitat suitability model. It's kind of the same, but one deals with habitat, the other deals with species. And it's very easy. Consider that I have a lot of remote sensing data, something like elevation or aspect, north, south, whatever, or humidity of the soil. Here I have the occurrences of data, process are the occurrence of the species. So I can relate the occurrence of the species with a lot of information, topography and soil moisture and blah, blah, blah. I put everything into, of course, some kind of model, R, linear model, GLM, whatever, and so on. And then at the end, I can get a spatial prediction of the occurrence of the species for the whole area I'm considering. You know, like, I'm sure you know this, but this is one of the most common applications of remote sensing in ecology. Like something that you will see most probably in your life, and there are a lot of software, free software, easy to use, like Maxent and similar, that can allow you to do this. Okay, but again, remote sensing. What is remote sensing? In its broader sense, means having collected information about some object through the analysis of data acquired by a device that is not in contact with the object. This is the widest definition. Of course, it's not telepathy, but you need some kind of device. So remote sensing, basically, in a more technical definition, measures reflected or emitted electromagnetic radiation from Earth. Now we will go for it a bit. And so from this electromagnetic radiation, you can get information about the object you are detecting. Okay? And more specifically, we will talk about the digital remote sensing from airborne, spaceborne, and groundborne platform. Now I will show you for a bit. So the basic, you know, like, let's go for it. When I speak about spaceborne, airborne, blah blah blah, I mean this. This is ground-based, so like ground-borne, and it's about drones, so no more than 150 meters in height. Then you have all these kind of airplanes and so on, that's called airborne. And then you have spaceborne, so satellite, above the atmosphere. And of course, when you take these three different kind of platforms, you're also dealing with some resolution issue. The closer you are to the ground, or the closer you are to the object, the better will be the resolution of the information. Okay, but this is just some general information. Some of you already have seen this picture this morning. This is just to give an idea. So we have, when we are speaking about passive remote sensing, now I will explain you, this is happening. Like you have incident energy from the sun. When it hits the subject, the object, some part of this energy, electromagnetic energy, is absorbed, a part is transmitted around the object, and a part of it is reflected. Okay, and remote sensing exactly deal with that one, the reflected energy. So we have devices to measure that reflected energy. Okay, like a short story of remote sensing. Of course, maybe the first remote sensing device can be the camera obscura if you really we want to go really back in time, but this is not the place. Let's say that observation of the Earth from above. Let's take it in this definition, this way. So from 1858, that we had the first aerial photograph. Then in 1909, the brother Whites did some first flight on Centocelle. Oh, it's even my Italian word, Centocelle. I could pronounce it. I couldn't pronounce it. I lost it. And of course, we have a lot of amazing happenings about remote sensing. But in red, you have the most important one. And in 1960, we had the first satellite, TIROS-1, television and infrared observation satellite that was launched by NASA. So it was quite revolutionary. And these are images of the TIROS. And basically, it's quite hard to distinguish something. You know, it was very bad resolution, bad information. But it was amazing to have an object in space. Then, of course, we are close to our era, to our time, and all of you know these things, Google Earth. Google Earth is just a way of using remote sensor data. And we all know about the existence of satellites. Up to these days, from 2010, why I think it's important? Because also Europe launched its own satellite program, okay, through the ESA, European Spatial Agency, and it launched into the space 5 Sentinel satellites, and you may know because it's Copernicus program. Maybe you've heard about it, but whatever, just to maybe you have in your mind, and it will be useful. Here, just to give you the magnitude of what I'm speaking about with this satellite era. I have two links here to website. One I've already showed this morning, but I want to show it again to those that were not here. This is called Stuff in Space. Okay, so it's an online record of all the objects we have in space right now. Okay, red, blue are still active, while gray one are not operational anymore. And it's amazing. of course, it's a layer of satellite. Yes, it's amazing, and we lost. Okay. You see, if I point one of these, I can get information, and I can even look for my satellite if I want to see, for example, what about Sentinel? Sentinel-2A, that is one of the satellite I'm using the most. Here, now in this moment, it's above Brazil, Amazonas forest. And so, this is quite funny. It's more like a game than scientific information, but it's amazing to look at it. For example, we also should have Galileo groups. Is as well a program made by the European Union. And you know most probably that we have been using for GPS the NASA satellites so far, but finally we have a dedicated European satellite program for our positioning that is dedicated to Europe. So it's quite good. And they're still working on it. It's not working totally, but now even the last smartphones, for example, are starting to install this Galileo device for using Galileo satellites for positioning. So this is one thing. The other side I want to show you, it's quite funny. It's Book My Launch. It's Rocket Lab USA. You need to launch something in space, some sensor, some camera. Well, you can do it. You don't need NASA, you don't need ESA, you don't need all these kind of things. It's just a private site. For example, Book My Lunch. Lounge, not lunch. And you can buy a whole flight, or you can share the satellite with someone else. You know, and let's try ride-share. Small sat, for example. Okay, they ask you for information, but in some case there is also, sorry guys, it's more clear. You have this information. So satellite Q3 2008, it's full, 100% booked. So there is no space. Everything is booked. Okay, this launch 2019 is 50% booked. It will go up to 500 kilometers above with a sun synchronous movement. That's too much for you, but even for me somehow. But it's the way that the satellite follows the Earth, and you can go into it. You can select a space. Okay, so you have this unit 3, and it depends on the device you want to launch from space. And come on. 3 units, $240,000. Not so much. With some kind of scientific program or scientific grant, you can get something like that. So you see, like, it's amazing. And now you can also understand why there is so much stuff in space in the previous, as shown in the previous website. Okay, but this was just for curiosity. Let's go back the presentation. Okay. First, let's go into more technical understanding of it. We have 2 types of sensor, passive and active sensor. From the image, it is quite intuitive. The passive one, basically, you have sun hitting the subject, you have reflected energy, and the satellite measuring the reflected energy. That then, of course, sent to some ground control section. In the active sensor, it's totally different. It's the platform that emits some kind of electromagnetic power and then record what is back from that electromagnetic signal that it launched. Okay. In few words, passive sensors are aerial photograph, orthophotography, multispectral images, now we will go through it, hyperspectral images, all these kind of things that observe the art. While for the active sensor, we have basically, you may have heard about it, radar and lidar. Okay? And basically are different kind of applications for different kind of information. I will go through it as well. I will first speak about it and then about lidar. Again, some of you already seen it. Just to give you an example of what's happening, you have the electromagnetic reflectance, okay? There is a lens. Then you have a filter that will filter certain sector of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now I will show you. Then, of course, through some kind of electronics device, you have a digital number that does an image. You get a, most of you, I guess, know raster images and pixel. Also, when you, I don't know, when you focus on some picture, you ended up in having out of pixel, you know. So this is what you get. You get a matrix with different values of the object that you are recording. These kind of images are described by 4 kinds of resolution. Okay, so once you have a passive, once you have a remote sensing images, let's say once you have a remote sensing images, you have 4 kinds of resolution that you have to take into consideration that are quite important. So, a matrix have this kind of information. Let's go step by step. Radiometric resolution. Radiometric resolution is simply the sensitivity of the detector you're using. Okay? 1 bit, 2 bit, 3 bit, 8 bit. But you can have even more, you know. 1 bit, it's 1 to the power of 1, so it's just 1 to the power of 2, sorry. You just have two information, 0 and 1, okay? Then you go to 8 bit and you have 256 levels, so you have a higher power of distinguishing object. Okay, so this is the radiometric resolution. I went quite easy into it, but I think it's fine. There is the formula. So 8 bit, it's simply 8 bit, it's 2 to the power of 8. This is how it's calculated. Then you have in this one the spatial resolution. Again, it's very intuitive. This is the same images for all these grids. And here you have the images 80 per 80 meters pixel, and here you have the images half meter for half meter. You can see, like, in this way you cannot recognize anything. In this picture it's quite clear, it's a harbor and it's recognizable. Okay, it doesn't mean that a higher spatial resolution is always good. It depends on what you are recording, on what you are studying. Okay? Then you have temporal resolution. A good temporal resolution is simply when you have many repetition of the same place, many picture of the same place in many close moments. Okay? So, for example, if you want to measure some seasonal difference in a field, you may need some good temporal resolution, because you need that the satellite fly above that area many times in a season. Okay, in 2, 3 months, 4 months. Sometimes you don't need it. It's just one observation per year, it's fine. So I guess it's clear. Let's go on. And then at last, the most important and the most difficult to understand is the spectral resolution. Okay. So radiometric resolution is the sensitivity of the sensor. Temporal and spatial, it's quite intuitive. And then we have spectral resolution. Basically, it deals with the number of spectra, plural. It deals with the number of spectra that a satellite can record. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It depends, of course. let's go step by step. We have single band, so we are just selecting and observing an image this is the spectral wavelength, maybe in this length. We are just in the visible area. So we are interested only in this kind of wavelength. And then we have panchromatic, so it's like a single bidimensional matrix. Then we have the most common and important for remote sensing, multispectral and hyperspectral. Okay, multispectral is a set of bidimensional matrix, in that way, bidimensional matrix, each related to one band. Okay? Multispectral generally includes, so I was right this morning, up to 7 bands, I remember more. And then you have hyperspectral, it's a set of bidimensional matrix, each related to one band, including generally more than 100 bands. And now recently we have ultraspectral band, it's like a continuous set of bands up to 1000. So basically what we have, it's a camera with 6 lenses. You remember the first picture with 6 filters that will filter a certain wavelength of light, and then out of that you will have a set of bidimensional matrix with each matrix corresponding to one band of this. Okay? Here an example of what I'm saying. This is an example of the wavelength of vegetation taken by a Landsat satellite. This is the typical electromagnetic reflectance that the vegetation has. And it's quite typical, it's easy to recognize. And in this case, we have this satellite that has 7 bands, so it's a multispectral camera. Okay, in this dedicated wavelength, 3 in the visible, what we see, what we are humans are able to see in this kind of wavelength, and then we have other 3 bands in infrared, shortwave infrared, and so on. Something that we cannot see, of course. So what really remote sensing is doing is that it sees in different bands that we are not able to observe. So it can see not more, but it can see different information, okay, than we can see, than we can observe. This is a general summary of the most common surfaces that you may encounter when you work in remote sensing. As you can see, the vegetation is very similar to the one I showed you just before. Okay, so this is the wavelength in micrometers. This is the visible spectrum, and these are the most common reflectance. So soil is different from vegetation, that is different from water, and so on. Okay, today I will focus only, I will give you just some information, basic information about the vegetation reflectance, the vegetation information, because I don't know much about the rest. So, in this signature of the vegetation, we call it in this way, this is the signature of vegetation of remote sensing, we have some sector of this wavelength that can give us a set of interesting information. In the first part, in the visible one, and of course visible because we are able as well to see pigments, we have information about leaf pigments and chlorophyll absorption and so on. In the near infrared, more or less, sector, we can see the cell structure. And in the last part of this shortwave infrared, we can see the water content. Okay, it's like water absorption, for example. Let's go, just to show you some stupid example. And these are in the visible sector. You can see that depending on the pigment you have, you may have different electromagnetic reflectances. So this could be a way to classify or to distinguish certain kinds of vegetation or vegetation with different pigments as well. Then in the part I told you that it was about cell structure, I'm sorry this is in Italian, but the higher the peak of this, okay, of the reflectance percentage, the higher is the number of leaves, stratum, of leaves layers, okay? And it can give you also information about the parenchyma, the structure of the leaf, okay? For example, generally, sorry if I cross this, when you have a lower reflectance in that area, you're dealing with gymnosperm, coniferous. While generally, if you have a higher one, you're speaking about broadleaves. And so this is just our example. And this is how we do generally when we classify the landscape to distinguish between different kind of vegetation and forest, simply because they have a different signature, okay? They have a different electromagnetic reflectance. Each type of vegetation has a different electromagnetic reflectance. And also, maybe vegetation that is not very healthy will give you another kind of information. When I speak about water absorption, you know, you can have this kind of course it's an information about the species, but it's also an information about the health of the species, the condition of the species. And this is something that is very used. For example, that kind of that section of the wavelength is very used in agriculture application to see if the cultivation, if the field is growing well, or maybe we need to put more water in that corner because there is not enough water in that. So in this kind of application. And here it's another example of what you can do with this electromagnetic signature. Here we have an example of spectral libraries. It means that every species, more or less, will have a different reflectance. So there is a program, and they're trying to collect a single electromagnetic signature for not every species, but for the most common species, of course. Okay, and this is amazing because it can really help. Okay, I guess this is slightly clear. Here I want to, I'm sorry for this brainstorming. I know it's totally new for you, but at least you can fix some term in your brain and you may find useful later. Another important things that you can do with the electromagnetic spectrum of vegetation are indexes. Maybe you've heard about this, normalized differential vegetation index, difference vegetation index, that measure the greenness, thus the chlorophyll content of vegetation. Okay, it's an index that goes from -1 to +1, and the higher the value, the more chlorophyll or the more greenness you can observe. Okay, so the photosynthetic activity with higher value of NDVI generally is higher, and this is quite useful, as I told you also in agriculture, but not only. Like when you deal with I don't know, landscape classification, land cover mapping, and you want to extract just vegetation. You know, you want to have a measure of the vegetation area in a country. You just do a vegetation, an NDVI index. You take all the values from 0 to +1, and you get the vegetation. So you have what we call a future extraction. You have extracted just vegetation out of the land, if you want to have some analysis of the vegetation, of course. It's about a ratio between infrared minus red divided by infrared plus red. Okay. Next step it's active sensor. So far we have been speaking like a general introduction, but so far I've been speaking about passive sensors, okay? And now it's more about active sensor. You may have heard about it, it's LiDAR, light detection and ranging, or laser imaging detection and ranging. It's not clear which is the wide abbreviation is that way. It's a very modern technique, and generally it's used for very accurate mapping of topography. You can do it on the field as well with a laser scanning, or you can do it from above. Okay, but remember, it's an active sensor. I will switch. Remember, it's an active sensor. It means that it cannot be, this active sensor cannot be mounted on a drone, for example. Why? Because a drone is a small device with low battery energy that is barely enough for the flight. The LiDAR needs a lot of energy because it's an active sensor. It must throw a signal to the ground and then have to record, okay, the reflected signal. So generally it's mounted on, it's an airborne platform, it's mounted on airplanes. And this was possible especially with this new era of GPS, okay, global positioning system, but especially with the GPS, it's called incorporating differential GPS, because they are systems that can really give you an impressive and amazing detail of your position, up to centimeters, you know, like it's very accurate. I will not tell you how it works, but it works quite well. It's a triangulation between GPS, airplane, ground stations, corrections, you know, it's quite hard. But anyway, how does LiDAR, airborne LiDAR works? You have an airborne, you have an airplane, you have this sensor. This sensor just hit the ground with a dedicated band, that generally is one band, okay, only one band, and it's generally close to near infrared, you know, laser. So it's a laser beam in near infrared mounted on the aircraft. It hit the ground, then it's reflected. The airplane just record the returns, so the reflected energy, and also calculate the time that this return took to get back to the airplane. So together with the very accurate position, time of returns, and so on, what you get generally is a cloud. It's a cloud of points in X, Y, Z domain. Okay, just to give you an example, a bit here. This is a cloud points. You know, these are thousands and thousands of small points in a, of course, in a three-dimensional space, that each point representing a single laser beam of the aircraft. Okay, I think this is as well intuitive. Of course, why did I put this? Because when you have a laser, generally the ground is not flat. You have many layers that the beam can hit, you know, and return. So on a single beam, you have several returns. But of course, generally, this return, for example, will be quite lower energy, you know, than the first one. So this is why generally we can, when we speak about vegetation or whatever, we can differentiate between the first returns and the last returns, because they have different amount of energy, okay? And this is amazing, because if you plot these points on our XY plane, you have this point, this image. You have the first return and the last return. that generally in a forest, for example, would be the ground and the canopy. So somehow this laser scanning gives you the chance to measure the height of the vegetation, for example. This is what we call last pulse and first pulse. Okay, or in technical term, this would be, last pulse would be the DTM, Digital Terrain Model, you've heard about it. And the first one would be the DSM, Digital Surface Model. What you deal generally, if you have done this kind of analysis using this topographical information, maybe you have been using the DEM, Digital Elevation Model. Okay, Digital Elevation Model, it's a mean between these two. Okay, so it's a kind of how the topography works. It's a bit different, but it would be better to work with DTM and DSM when we do this kind of local analysis, especially. Okay, this is what I just said, sorry. So you have these point clouds, three-dimensional, and out of these clouds, you can build DSM, DTM, Digital Elevation Model, also TIM, Triangular Irregular Network. So you can build, finally you can calculate a surface, you know? You can have a raster, you can have a shape file, you can get many things out of a cloud point. Of course, these points of, this cloud of points are very, very heavy, several gigabytes, and must be handled by specific software and hardware. It's not something that you can do in your personal desktop. But once you have the derived information, it's perfect. It's much lighter, and you can use it in every software you want, R or GIS and so on. And okay, this is the. I just want to give you an example of this, of the application, you know, about these LiDAR images, if you give me a few seconds. Consider that now, you may know, but almost every European country has full coverage of LiDAR. So it's something that you can ask. Now I'm showing you an example from Italy, but Czech Republic has it as well. Let's wait for our ArcGIS to open. Sorry, it takes time, but we will make it. Okay, this is this is a section of my beloved coastal dunes, on which I've been sampling and walking under the amazing Italian sun for kilometers and kilometers, but I have amazing memory of that time. And it's close to Rome, it's south of Rome. This is the Bosco del Presidente. It's like the president park, private president park, with this kind of not really original forest, but whatever. It's a natural area. And I want to show you the DEM, so it's the digital elevation model. That theoretically this one is the digital terrain model. I'm sorry for the name, but this is what they sent me. And as you can see from the digital elevation model, if I zoom on it, I can see more or less the topography of the area. You know, I can even see somehow the dune. You know, this kind of lines that you can see. It's the micromorphology of the dune. You know, of also old dunes. But at the same time, as I told you, I have the DSM, the Digital Surface Model, that is the first pulse. So you have first pulse and last pulse. Wait, it's not somehow. Okay, sorry. So this is the surface, digital surface model. some other one over the other. So even if maybe you're not so much trained with photo interpretation, but it's clear that here I'm looking at bushes, vegetation entities, you know, while here it's totally different. It's the ground. Okay, well, it's not so accurate, of course. I'm not speaking about it, but somehow this is what we are talking about. And one of the nice application that you can make out of it is do a subtraction, a delta value. So you subtract to the digital elevation model, you subtract the contrary, to the digital surface model minus the digital elevation model. Basically, you get the difference, the vegetation height. Somehow, some scientists think that this is a proxy of biomass. Well, it is, but I don't really agree. But I will show you it's a very easy, I would say, very easy calculation. You just take the digital surface model. I hope it works. Sometimes GIS has some problem. Let's say delta. Okay, let's see if it's working. We can leave it calculating. Okay, basically, this is the difference. Okay, if I want to have some information I put on this, it will tell me that the pixel value is 10 meters. Okay, so I'm dealing with maybe some tree or something else. If I go on the beach, close to the beach, the value is 0.8, so not even 1 meter. Maybe it's a Mophila. I don't know. Okay. Well, don't take it too like literally. I'm just saying that this calculation allows you to have this delta value. It's information about the height of the vegetation or any other stuff. If I have a house here, most probably the values would be the height of the house. But in this case, that is a natural place, what I get is the height of the vegetation. Okay? And especially when you have so amazing spatial resolution, here we are speaking about 2 meters per 2 pixels. This is an information that may help, especially if we are dealing with coastal dunes, for example, that they have a really amazing heterogeneity in small area, because the gradient is very steep in few meters. So you need good spatial resolution to study these kind of ecosystems through remote sensing. So in this case, LiDAR gave us a huge help in the spatial analysis of this area. And while I was speaking about multispectral images and satellite images, I totally forgot, because I wanted to show you in this last moment also a stupid tool that we can use, and I want to also to show you a Sentinel-2 images, just to give you again a rough idea of what I'm talking about and about bands. So if you give me a few seconds, I will launch this software. It's Snap software. It's free. It's offered by the Spatial Agency, European Spatial Agency. It's very easy to use. There are a lot of tutorials on YouTube as well, and also on their official website. So it's easy. And if you want to work with Sentinel-2, it's even more easy, because it's dedicated to Sentinel-2. But it can work with any kind of multispectral or hyperspectral satellite images. Okay, it's not only for Sentinel. Let me upload a Sentinel image that I just download it. It's somewhere here. Okay, here I have, I don't know, maybe someone that works, I've worked with GIS knows how it works, I don't know. This is the table of contents or the place where you have the object, the images you want to work with. So this is Sentinel images. Don't look at all this endless code. It's quite important if you work with that, but for the moment it's not important. But, you know, there is a date, 2018. 02 February, so it's 10 February 2018, but whatever. That's a code that you need to know. I don't remember exactly what everything means. You have metadata, that is the information about the images. You have vector data, that is useful for some kind of analysis. And as I told you, you have bands. Okay, here Sentinel has up to 12 bands, you know, and these are the measure of the wavelength of the band, okay? Red, green, blue, and so on. I can visualize one of it, but of course it will be in black and white, and I don't know if it can be so much informative, but it's just to let you understand, you know. But what I want to show you is that, first of all, I want to open this in some kind of false color, RGB. Okay, like what did the software do? It just selected the RGB bands, so the one we can see, and combined together in order to give us this, okay, a false color images. Again, this is Italy, and this is close to Rome. This is Rome, and we can focus on it, we can zoom in it, and you know, like the resolution here is not amazing. It's 20 meters, but anyway, it's a good resolution. It's enough. Another things I want to show you before passing through the last things is the spectral view. What does it do? What does it do? I have this, it's a band. Every star is a band, you know. Now I'm pointing in a vegetation type. Do you remember the kind of typical, it's not really precise, okay, but kind of typical vegetation signature? Here we are. These are the wavelengths. These are the 12 bands I have in Sentinel-2. This is the strength, the percentage of reflectance. But if I move my cursor, that one, in another place, like in a city, I have a different signature. If I move it in the water, I have a different signature. Can you see what I was talking about? Okay, it's I'm telling this in a very rough way. I'm sorry, but just to give you an idea. So, with this kind of information, we can distinguish the substrate. We can distinguish the object we are working, we are observing. Okay. With this software, then you can classify the landscape in land cover categories. You can do principal component analysis. You can do many things. Now I want to close it and just do the last very few things I want to tell you. I don't want to keep you here too much. It was intended to be quite short, otherwise too many information. And this is just something that you need to know, in my opinion, because this is the last frontier. Okay, it's the experience of the unmanned aerial vehicle that you know as drones. Okay, so the ground-borne platform. They are very good to detect fine-scale ecosystem, like very fine scale, up to centimeters. You can have an amazing resolution. And what they do, basically, is that they are middle way between the remote sensing of satellite and the LiDAR active sensor. Consider that unless you have free access to LiDAR, they are very, very expensive to get. And the same is for satellite. You have Landsat and Sentinel satellite for free. All the rest of satellites with better resolution are not available. You have to pay for it. Okay, and you have to pay a lot of money generally. If you want to get a LiDAR of some area, you have to pay a flight. You have to pay an airplane to fly over the area. And generally it's in euros, but it's like at least 20,000 euros per mission. So it's quite a lot. What can you do if you don't need to fly over too big area like the Vulture Republic? It's too much. But if you want to have a remote sensing image of a national, of a small portion of a park or an area, of a small part of a system, drones, UAV are the best solution so far because they're not too expensive. You can buy a good drone for 1,000 or 2,000 euros now, a bit more if you want more sensors. But with these drones and with this emerging technology that I will show you, you will get the multispectral images to classify the substrate, but you can also get the topographic surface. So you can get the digital terrain model, digital surface model, but not through the LiDAR technology, through another technology that is called the SFM, structure, form, motion. You know, and first time I saw it, it's amazing. Guys, I don't know, any one of you has a drone, Phantom or, no, none of you? But anyway, you can buy in the Alza, you can buy a drone for, I don't know, like 15,000 crowns. You can illegally download a software, because otherwise you have to buy it. I'm sorry, I'm not telling you that you have to download this. I'm not telling you this, but I'm telling that people can do it. Like, or you can buy the software, the Agisoft, you can buy a drone for 15,000 crowns, and you can get like a 3D model of a substrate you are studying. I don't want to go too much into this also because it's very difficult and I need to study a bit more. I don't take care generally of this process in my department, but it's very easy. Basically, it's something like I have this thermals and I take, I don't know, 50 pictures of these from different point of view, you know, and then I find common place, like this is a common place, this is a common place. Like I try to understand control points that are the same in every picture, and then the software is able to build out of this many pictures and out of this control point a three-dimensional structure of what I'm looking. And this is quite amazing. And basically, you can get a digital elevation model with a drone flight. It's very easy and it's very cheap. Okay, if you need, if some of you is doing PhD or need something, and we do this kind of things in our department. We have 3 drones, and we are quite used to do these kind of things. So this is why I want to close this presentation with some stupid picture of image of the last mission we did in Italy with the department here in Prague and with 2 PhD students in Italy. This is a very cheap drone. It's a fixed wing, so it's a wing basically, very light, so it can fly wherever you want. There's no need to hurt anyone. We mounted on this a camera that you can see is 4 bands camera, exactly as you see it. RGB and infrared, that for vegetation is good enough, you know, to get some preliminary analysis. And then we programmed the flight, because a drone, when you do this kind of analysis, you don't have the remote controller and you drive it along your path, because it may get lost and it's not good to lose a drone. But you need a software, very easy. You just draw the flight as it should be and you tell the software, okay, I want to monitor, I want to scan this area and I want to get this kind of resolution, blah, blah, blah. It does everything alone. So the program goes directly into the software of the drone, and then you launch the drone, simply. Simply. Not always simply. This is Bazzichetto che si occupa della calibratura. Sorry guys. Del drone. Sorry, it's in Italian. So we are calibrating the reflectance, because you need to calibrate the reflectance. Con un sistemino. Calibration was successful, e quindi ci muoviamo verso il volo. Okay, we're making the flight. This is basically what I'm saying. Guys from our department. Okay. Very good, Bazzichetto! And he does everything alone. He goes on his own and collects data for us. We are sitting on the beach. Okay, and this is all I wanted to tell you. Maybe I told too many things. I hope you got something. And there would be many other things to tell you, but this was just an overview of the remote sensing landscape so far. That's all.
Thank you, Marco. That's really amazing what this technology offers. So we have time for some questions, please.
This drone is called EV, right?
Yeah.
How much cost it?
Well, now this, when we bought it, it was 5 years ago. I was not even in the department, but it was something like 10,000 euros. So it's a lot. But now you can get a commercial one, Parrot. Maybe you heard this. It's a commercial brand. A Parrot for much less, 2,000–3,000 euros. And it can be used for scientific purposes. You know, it's not just a game. You can collect. But you know what? It's not the drone that is expensive. It's the sensor generally. Even if you buy,
the price is including the sensor, right?
Yeah. For example,
NDVI and infrared.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have the most common drone, that is the Phantom, that is around about 25,000 crowns, so much. That's only for the drone. But you can buy, because you can mount on this very commercial one, you can drive a near-infrared sensor and RGB. Somehow in the last year, it's amazingly fast how things are evolving. Like these kind of sensors are sold for everyone, are available for everyone. I don't know what people will do with it, but you can buy a near-infrared sensor and put it on your drone.
And do you need to have some driver license for it?
It depends. It depends on the weight of the drone. You know what? Because there are drones like this as a copter, and they weigh up to 5 kilos because they have to lift huge sensor with 8 bands, 10 bands, and in that case you need a license. Because imagine what would happen if something goes wrong and it falls down, you can kill someone basically. But you have these kind of drones, for example, the EB, it's fine, it's okay. Because it's plastic, it's polyester, will not hurt anyone, even if it hits you, it's fine. Or, well, it's not fine, but you will not go to the hospital directly. Or you have smaller drones that are for free. So it depends on the weight and on the size of the drone. But you have a huge choice.
So if I understand right, even with this 4 spectrum, what you have in this drone, you can get 3D image.
Yeah. For the 3D image, you don't even need the near infrared. You need RGB. You can do this structure for motion algorithm even with your camera. If you want to build a 3D model of your cat sitting there, you have just to take a lot of picture of him, if he's able to stand still, and then you put these pictures into the software and it does everything. And you have of course it will not be georeferenced. You know, you will not have the X and Y information of GPS, but you will have a 3D image of your cat. Yeah, that you can do. Of course, in spatial ecology, you need the georeferencing. You need the coordinates of your ecological topic. It's quite important.
Possible to read some information except about vegetation, except this it's conifers or broadleaf in this resolution?
With Sentinel? Yeah, of course. Sentinel, it has different spatial resolution and 12 bands from 10 to 60 meters spatial resolution. But you can, of course, you can distinguish much more than coniferous, than gymnosperm and angiosperm. It's much more powerful from this point of view. You can distinguish type of grasslands as well. The point is that just few words. I want to tell you this. Like, of course, I was raised as an ecologist, as a biologist, and I have a long experience on the field. And I can tell you that all these devices, without the experience of the field, are nothing. Working in this department of engineers, I can really tell you that you need to have a personal experience of what you're looking at. Okay, so do not pretend to understand everything on the ground only by remote sensing. You know, we still need it. We still need experience. We still need ecological background. Otherwise, it's impossible. It's really impossible. And you may encounter many mistakes. And believe me, I've seen so many mistakes in the department by people that are very good in technological skills, but they don't know nothing about the field. Flowers and communities, plant communities, and abundances, compositions, and so on. So it's just a small add. Yep.
When you have the infrared sensor on the drone, which wavelength it is?
Which wavelength? You know, it really depends on the. I can show you. It really depends on the type of infrared you're interested in, because the infrared namely goes quite wide, from 0.7 to 3, something like this, you know. And it really depends. On what you are interested in. So you will select your window, your bands, depending on what you want to do. About the drone, it's something like near infrared. Okay, it's something like near infrared because it was made for NDVI, and the NDVI needs the near infrared information. Okay, but the Sentinel goes quite farther from the near infrared.
So how consuming it is, let's say, to make a digital elevation model using a drone of an area of, let's say, 1 by 1 kilometer with spatial resolution in which you can see individual plants.
But well, it depends on weather condition.
If the conditions are
1 day and a half.
1 day and a half.
Yep.
So it's
10 flights.
There,
yeah. Because if you want to have this spatial resolution, the drone must fly quite low. So the overall image is a bit narrower, so you need more flights to get the things. But 1 day and a half, yeah, 2 missions, it's fine. But 1 day and a half, I mean, not of flight. It's simply that you have to go there, you have to bring your stuff, you have to charge more batteries, you have to plan the flight, landing, a takeoff, panino, sandwich, like all included.
That's fine.
You tried another sensor than this visible and near infrared? For example, the thermal camera?
Personally, not, because but you have in Landsat, and it's free. You have also the thermal band. Well, in my vegetation analysis, I've never needed it, so never use it. But you have it, of course. So if you want, you can have it. Okay.
Any other questions? If not, then thank you very much, Marco.
Thank you.
So, sorry, I was switching Czech because the next seminar will be in Czech. Za týden se uvidíme tady. Přednášku bude mít Tamara Kišiková a bude mluvit o výsledcích z jejich výzkumu vlastně Luk